more like Gary Lineker at the 1990 World Cup. Jennie Smith, Safeguarding Today. In this episode, Danny sits down with Jennie Smith, Director of Safeguarding Today, to explore the crucial role of safeguarding in football, from grassroots to the professional game. Jennie shares insights from her extensive experience, including her background as a criminal barrister and prosecutor, and her work leading safeguarding education for the English Football League, EFL. Key discussion points include the importance of safeguarding in grassroots football and how it differs from the professional game, the role of mental health first aid and why every club should have at least one trained individual, best practices for coaches and clubs when handling safeguarding concerns and mental health disclosures, the impact of safeguarding education in football and how it has evolved in response to past failures, how to challenge outdated views on safeguarding and mental health while creating a safe and supportive football culture, the role of parents, coaches, and club officials in creating a positive football environment for young players. Jennie also shares her thoughts on handling disclosures, dealing with difficult safeguarding scenarios, and the need for football to catch up with wider societal changes in areas like mental health and inclusion. This is a must-listen for coaches, parents, and club officials who want to create a safer, more supportive footballing environment for young players.
I'm pleased as well because I'm a mum to 3 boys, like 2 of which play grassroots football. It really helps me because obviously I've got my professional head on when I'm talking about professional football clubs, but I've got my mum, like safeguarding mum hat on as well, you know, when I'm talking about grassroots. So I feel that'll help people, but at least I know.
Yeah, definitely, because people always want to know. Like at grassroots, they're always so obsessed with pro game and what goes on in there. And I think sometimes too obsessed with the point they try and recreate what goes on on a grassroots pitch and in a grassroots club from what they've heard and seen at an academy or on. And you know, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? You know, with resource, expertise, technical ability, etc. But like one thing that comes up in our mental health first aid training for grassroots, what we do is like, you know, we say that mental health first aid training is not about being a psychologist or a clinician and diagnosing. It's about spotting signs and signposting. And one of the things that comes up is, you know, when you're having a mental health conversation with people, and it is a very, it carries a great deal of responsibility for me. And I'll cover this when we start. And it's when people are saying, well, how do I approach it when it's a younger person, you know, a young player? You know, from a safeguarding perspective, where do I stand? What's the best way of approaching it? You know, and we'll always say, well, obviously don't single people out. What I do is I just have like walk and talks around pitch as the training. So, and I do it with all of them. So there's no singling out. But the question that comes up is, well, what happens then if something's disclosed that is above and beyond where this, you know what I mean? And that's the first thing that people are, and we've had, you know, not people at your level on there, but people that know about it. And they're sometimes a bit, well, it's tricky. So that'd be nice for us to sort of, you know, start with that. Jennie, just want to say thanks so much for joining me today on this. We've been taking a bit of time to get it sorted because I know you're so busy and you're in big demand with what you do. So, you know, I'm really chuffed that you found time to do this. Before we kick off, can you just tell us who you are, what you do, please?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for having me, Danny. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you. So my name's Jennie Smith. I'm the Director of Safeguarding Today, and we are a national training and consultancy organisation. So we go into loads of different sectors. We're in charity sector as well as sports sector, but I'd say that me personally, I'd say 90% of my work is sport related, particularly professional football. But my background is that I was originally a criminal barrister. People will probably think, goodness me, you don't sound like what a barrister looks like on television. Sounds like, so I'm from Bolton originally. Started off in London in Chambers, and then I went to the Crown Prosecution Service. So I was with the CPS as a prosecutor for 10 years. And whilst I was there, I found that one of my strengths was to work with what we call RASO cases. So that's rape and sexual abuse cases, child abuse cases. So the worst kind of cases that we can deal with in humanity, I suppose. And a lot of people actively avoided doing that work. Whereas I think my dad's influence, my dad was a police officer, and I, was guided by him. And he said, this is not your life. What you're doing is doing a job for these people. And I found that I was able to kind of extract my emotions. It was a really hard thing to do because it was a very difficult job. So I did that for 10 years. And I think having 3 kids in 4 years probably was the deciding factor, that I was getting fined by nursery nearly every night, being late from court and things like that. So I wanted to educate basically and prevent harm from occurring, because I'd dealt with so many times where children have been harmed. I was starting to think in my second maternity leave, is there something I could do to educate, empower people? So I came up with this idea of setting up Safeguarding Today. And our first couple of years was, as new businesses with no client lists, it takes a while to get going. But I had an incredible opportunity in 2018 that I thought I was going pitching to all the EFL professional clubs. So I travelled, North, Midlands and South to present a product that I'd come up with, like a mock trial for the kids to get involved in. But it turns out that actually the head of safeguarding for the English Football League was really interested in working with me. So they just had, obviously people will know in football, the scandal of the child abuse scandal with the likes of Barry Bennell and other coaches. And the ex-footballers have been on the Victoria Derbyshire show a few months earlier. So I was asked originally to lead on their education programme for all the what's called DSOs in a professional club, so designated safeguarding officer, so someone who is responsible ultimately for maintaining and making sure that all the safeguarding processes are in place in a professional club. But as we know in the EFL, the clubs are not like the Premier League clubs where they can, in essence, throw money at whatever topic that they want to. So you've got a really wide range of experience with these DSOs. So you've got some people who, were great with the kids, they were good at coaching, they wanted to career progress, but they've never had any safeguarding experience. And then you've got some DSOs who led on public protection in the police. So what they don't know isn't worth knowing, so you've got a really wide range of abilities. So what we did was I led on a national learning needs assessment, basically. What do they need? What are the topics in club that are the kind of top hot safeguarding topics? And the top 3 that came out were mental health. So that was the top of the list: mental health, online safety and bullying. So they were the first 3 topics that we focused on. And then eventually we had 9 mandatory modules which still exist today, and they're mandatory, so they're written in the EFL safeguarding standards nationally. So within 2 years these DSOs have to complete these modules. So we know as an NGB that every single person who has that role of head of safeguarding DSO has had the quality assured training from the EFL. So it's a free service to all 72 clubs.
Brilliant.
And still so far, I'm very proud to say, I don't think that model exists in professional sport anywhere. They've got lots of different training, and some sports are doing a fantastic job. But particularly the EFL is seen as the kind of leading light in professional sport.
Brilliant.
So I'm still doing that. I'm on the 6th season. And it's now education for a lot more people within clubs. So we educated the DSOs, and then quite often now when I'm delivering training, there'll be academy staff, we've had physios on there, we've had club doctors, psychs in there, making sure that lots of different people, even the foundations as well, people safeguarding of the foundation, because obviously every football club has a charity attached to it. So we're trying to spread the message wider. And then this last season, I've just written first team safeguarding training and first team manager safeguarding training, which was really hard because I'm not a first team manager of a professional football club, so how can I empathise and think about getting into learner mode of what it is. And pretty much the message is look after each other, look after yourself, ask questions. I'm sure that you'll be probably saying this with your mental health training. It's okay to ask a question. Are you all right? Are you okay? We're all human, and I think we all have differing ranges of emotional intelligence. So some of us will pick up on that if we're empaths like me. We'll pick up if you can see it with your friends, can't you? If they're just not right, or your mum or dad, cousins or your brothers and sisters, whatever. It's just about being a human being, safeguarding. And I think that because it's such a big topic now, people are getting they're a bit scared of it, because we've got GDPR, and then can I tell someone if I'm worried about someone, and things like that, which we can chat about today. What it is, it's about being a human being. It's about being a nice person, caring, making sure that everybody's all right. And it's not just about children, it's making sure adults at risk are okay. It's also making sure that people who are your colleagues at work are okay. Like mental health first aid training that we'll touch on today. That's for any organisation, isn't it? It can be for any corporate. I think there's a lot of corporate entities that are doing mental health awareness training now. So for me, like, I'm living my best life now, because I've got three kids. I work from home. I do travel. If anyone wants me to travel, I will travel. It works. We chatted about that the first time we met, didn't we? Benefits of COVID, although there have been a lot of negative impacts of COVID, I think there's been a lot of positive impacts as well. So that's kind of me work wise. Mentioned the boys, 14, 11 and 9, 2 of which play at grassroots level. So like a shout out to Turton Tigers under Whites in Bolton. They're one of the founding grassroots football clubs, or one of the oldest grassroots football clubs in the country. And they're doing great. And what I do see though is I see negative behaviours. As a mum, I've got a friend who's a probation officer, and she's really senior in probation, and I think we're like the witches of Eastwick. We like to sit at the side of the the pitch on a Saturday morning, and we like huddle together, kind of pointing out the parents of the other team that being inappropriate, and being really negative. And it's just not what we need around our children. What we need is positivity. We have to check and challenge bad behaviour. We all have to accept that. But if we can do it as adults in a positive way, then that is something that I think, if we can spread that word, particularly to parents on the side of the pitch who are very passionate, it's about positivity for both sides as well. We should be cheering both sides. I remember my middle son, he played rugby for quite a while, and it was a really different atmosphere, really positive both sides. Not all the time, but I'd say like 95% of the time really positive. And we'd be clapping, they'd do an arch at the end of each match, they'd all clap each other and things like that. And I'd like to see stuff like that in grassroots football, actually, Danny, because I think we've got to remember that these kids are having fun, or they should be having fun. And if you have fun, you're going to perform better. And that's whether you're a first team player, in a Premier League club, EFL club, or if you're grassroots, because you want to do well. You want to do well. If you're happy, you're going to perform better. And I think that, those kind of, I suppose it's like parenting theories, isn't it? That if you, water a plant and talk to it, it grows better. That's what you do as a child. That's what you do as a parent. You encourage your children. And I think not we all, but some parents seem to forget that when they put the wellies on Saturday. Because they are passionate about the children, and they want to see their child win or do well or score a goal. But sometimes it can have a really negative impact.
I see it all the time. I think, and I think as a coach, you sometimes have to have what are difficult conversations with parents, and they're difficult because as a parent, your kids are your world, aren't they? They should be, and they're everything to you, and it's probably the most emotive subject and thing in your life. So I think I see a lot of parents that struggle to sort of compartmentalize their child from its behavior, or from their behavior, or from what they're doing, and like, on the sideline, like I say, I totally get that. I think for me, what winds me up more than anything, and that's on both sidelines, from the spectators, parents, carers, etc., family members, and then the coaches side, is it's grassroots kids football. If we're talking about kids, that is it. And the first thing for me is enjoy it. Let them enjoy it. You know, it's they're not the majority of kids, and when I say the majority, 99.9% of kids in grassroots football will not make it as professional footballers. That's not been negative. It's a fact. Just let them enjoy it. Just let them enjoy it. And the what I see from the sidelines, and the angst and the energy can quickly turn from positive to negative, you know, and it's like a baying crowd. And the kids, let it go, just enjoy it.
Yeah, I remember my eldest at some point did, he doesn't play football now, but at some point he was playing a bit of football, you know, like training, not many matches. And Keith Hill, who used to be the manager at Rochdale and Bolton, was he at Bolton as well? I think he was. His son was there. And I remember him saying to me, Jenny, this is about the kids having fun. And this is a guy that's come from professional football. I'm sure that he probably wanted his son to go on the pathway to professional football, but he was really realistic. He was like, they're 9, like, you know, if they were going to be in a professional club, they'd be in a professional club at 9.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
You know, there'll always be parents who push the children to the nth degree, but those are the parents that get them in academies, you know, or they're getting them sniffing around clubs 5, 6, 7 years old, and that is the pathway that they've chosen for their child. Whether that's because the child has got a very unique talent, or whether that's something that the parents have decided, you know, for them to do. You get pushy parents everywhere, don't you?
I think majority of it is pushy parents, though. I think, and I'm weird, Jenny. You know, with my son, all I push him to do is give 100%. That's all. That's all. I just say I don't care. And when I coach him, I'd say to lads, lads, I don't care if we win 10-1 or lose 10-1. I really don't. What I care about is that you give 100%, enjoy it, and learn. And if you do those 3 things, the likelihood is that you will win or be close to winning. But if you don't do those 3 things, you're going to struggle to win. And I'd make it clear to parents, don't care about the score. They all get equal game time, you know. And that's about managing where you have, you know, you wouldn't put all of your, you know, you not, when I say weakest, I don't mean weak, you know, players with a lesser ability on together, just managing the team, getting everything sorted, and letting them enjoy it. And you know, and like you said about pro footballers, you know, when you said you're living your dream, and you know what you're doing, you're enjoying your job. And pro footballers are no different. If they're not in, and it's their job ultimately, they, you know, I've heard them, they say, like I say, I'm going to work, because there's no other way for it really. And what I do, I don't see as work, but you know, we call it work, don't we? And I hear pro footballers, they'll say, you know, I'm going to work today, and you're thinking, bloody work, God, you know. But it's the job that they get paid for, and if they're not enjoying it, they're not going to perform, are they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just taking a couple of points, I think about parents as well. Maybe this is a wider conversation about society as well. And you know, I think a lot of parents need to take responsibility for the children's actions as well. I think there's a lot of negative behaviour from parents where it's very clear that their child has maybe committed a foul, but they're absolutely adamant that it was the other player's fault, or you know, it wasn't their child's fault. And for me, that doesn't teach a child anything. Like my middle one, he's got a temper on him. He's always gobbing off, you know, and he gets told off, not every single match, but certainly if he's not in the right mood, you know, he'll end up getting told off. And I'm always backing the coaches up. I've stood at train, you know, at the AstroTurf up here in our little village near Bolton, you know, Thursday night, and he's just not been in the right mood. And he's, you know, he's been a bit cocky, and I'm the like stood next to the coaches saying, wind your neck in, turn your volume down, you know, let's be positive. And I see a lot of parents that don't necessarily do that, and I think you've got to take responsibility for good and bad behaviour as a parent. And I think that it does reflect in how the children might behave on pitch. But we all have bad days, don't we? We all, you know, as adults have bad days. I can be in a bad mood, you know, I'm in a good mood mainly, but you know, it can be a bit of a stroppy person, you know. So I get it. I get that we do have off days. But I'll tell you what, the two coaches that coach my two lads, my little one's team, they're brilliant. They're like yin and yang. You've got one who's pushing them, and then you've got the other one going, chill out, don't worry about it. But I'll tell you what, I've never once heard either of them raise their voice.
No.
Not once in 2 years.
No.
And what they do is, in fact, I think they go quieter, like professionals. Like when you're dealing, like police officers trying to deal with someone to calm them down, they go quieter, and you can not actually hear it from the sidelines what they're talking about, but they're obviously getting a telling off.
Yeah.
That for me is the way you get children to listen.
Well, if you shout all the time, then it's no different, is it? It's no, I know parents that just shout at the kids all the time, and then they're like confused at why the kid is not responding, or what, I tell him off and he don't do all, and I'm thinking, because all you do is shout at him. So it's it's no different. It's just what they hear all the time. It's like asking them what they want for tea. You're just shouting at them every time they do anything wrong. It just in one ear and out to other, and it is. And I agree with you. I think if you, I'm a parent myself, so I'm not castigating all grassroots parents or carers, family members. But you speak to most coaches in grassroots and they'll say, what's your biggest, issue, or your biggest, not problem, but, things and it's parents, carers, family members. And it is. And they don't,
Yeah, I think that goes for professional football as well. There's a lot of parents that are perhaps, they believe that they're acting in their child's best interest, but I've got examples of where the professionals in the NGB have got walked out of meetings because parents are consistently calling their 13-year-old the player, and I've heard where these staff members have said, sorry, we're talking about your child, we're not talking about
what's NGB, Jenny? What's NGB?
National governing body. So your national governing body is your governing body that sets your rules and regulations. So obviously football probably uniquely has 3: FA, Premier League, EFL, and each have a different role to play within that triangle. So, boxing, they have a national governing body. A lot of sports are obviously funded by, there's about 120 sports that are funded by Sport England. So you've got to be a national governing body to be Sport England funded. And obviously with professional football, it's a very different setup. It's like horse racing. They've got the British Horse Racing Authority, and that's the national governing body, the NGB, that sets the regulations. And that might be a regulation about horse welfare, but it also might be a regulation about human welfare.
Yes.
Well, the built-in regulation. So how that works from a context of safeguarding is, let's say we've got a coach who is, let's use a professional football coach. So they're in the academy, and there's a complaint against them, and that complaint is the kind of behaviours we've just been talking about. It's in a professional football club. You're dealing with young people, children, and he used to be a former professional footballer in the 90s, 2000s, where they were shouted at, and it's the "it didn't do me any harm" attitude. Well, I'm it didn't do me any harm. The kids all the time. So you then get complaint after complaint after complaint about bullying. So in practice, what might happen is that the football club might have a disciplinary, but it might also be that it's gone so far. Say like he throws a boot at a child and it hits the child in the face and cuts his face. That's a serious assault on a child. So there are regulations. People who are listening to this podcast, please do not think I'm an expert in football regulation, because I'm not. I do, I keep my eye on it, but there's so many regulations. That's not my job now. The national governing body can ban people, so they've got the power to then go and ban somebody from sport. Obviously safeguarding covers a wide range of behaviours, including physical, sexual abuse. I've dealt with I've got a brief for the Rugby Football Union at the moment, and we're looking at banning somebody from the sport. Is quite high level and has trained other professionals within the game, and he's acted inappropriately towards children, and he needs to be banned. So they've got the power to ban this person from every single rugby match in the country where children are involved. And it's really wide ranging powers. the big, big behemoth people, these,
Yeah.
like, like, I don't think I realised when we were a very rugby household, as the kids were growing up, and I don't think my ex-husband realised how like big the contract was when I got the EFL, but my ex-brother-in-law was like, he's like the biggest football fan I've ever met. He knows every statistic about every football match ever, and he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you've got a contract with the EFL." And I was just like, moseyed on through. I don't think I realised the impact, and I think that is because I'm a lawyer and I've been a prosecutor. I've prosecuted famous people. I've prosecuted sports people that were in the public eye. I've had to do pre-charge advices on, really serious cases against chief execs of, multinational corporations. I'm not bothered who you are, as long as you're a nice person. That's all that matters. And I think that's probably why I think what I realised in football is you've got lots of companies for every topic: sports, nutrition, psychological, mental health, anything. To get into professional football, the door is pretty much bolted shut for the majority of people. But when you're in and you do a good job and you're not fazed by the enormity of it, that is where I think being a normal person, being a normal girl from Bolton has helped me, because I'm dealing with these really, very senior people. And if you're kind of bullshitting, excuse me, the swearing.
No, you're right. Yeah, no.
But if you're not being true to yourself, it just doesn't work. They just see it. They just see through it, because I think they have so many people trying to get into football. Whereas I'm not bothered about the football. I'm bothered about the kids. I'm bothered about the processes and procedures, and have we got the right people in place? And I think people trust what I say as well, because I am very kind of matter of fact in my advice. I'm quite happy to give anybody advice, and sometimes I get people phoning me up from like professional football clubs, just ad-libbing it, really, saying, "Oh, listen, we've got this. Can I just run it by you?" And I'll always say yes. And I encourage, if anybody ever wants just to, have 5 minutes on the phone, my ops man will be going mad saying, "You're not allowed to do free work." And
I think like with safeguarding, like, I think it's such a broad area, and it is, to a layperson, quite scary. And it's sort of, it's same as mental health for me, safeguarding, in that respect, that I think both carry, a safeguarding or a mental health conversation both carry a lot of responsibility. And I think sometimes some people avoid them for fear of getting it wrong, for fear of saying the wrong thing. And I think you said earlier, it's about just being a nice person and asking them if they're okay, and not being scared of that. And people, we do, like I said, with the mental health first aid training, and people said, when we're talking about, suicide, for example, really, deep topic, and people said, well, I don't think you should ask people that. And we did a webinar on it, and we had a lot of experts there that have all lived experience with suicide, and they said you should absolutely ask it, because you asking it is not going to make them think, "Oh, I never thought of that. What a great idea, and I'll go and do it." And I'm not being flippant about the topic, and this is exactly how the guy said it. And like, for me, as like, someone a bit older, and I think you referenced it back a bit earlier about, you didn't put it like this, but like old school philosophies around safeguarding and things. How do you like overcome that? Because obviously some things have never been acceptable, and like, we are where we are with safeguarding, and I think it's brilliant why we are where we are, and it's such a top of the agenda in football, and rightly so. We're only there though because of the awful things that happened.
It's very reactive.
And this is what I'm saying about mental health. I'm saying I don't want us to be where we are I want mental health to be where safeguarding is, but not as a result of a load of awful things happening. So just briefly, could you just give us like what was the trigger around the acceleration of safeguarding? What was the thing? I know there's a lot of bad things happen, but
is this in relation to football, or is
this football? In football,
they did have safeguarding procedures in place, and there was a head of safeguarding for the EFL and for the Premier League. But it was through the bravery of those wonderful men who have they've waived their anonymity. That in of itself, I think as a grown man, to go on television and tell, a country that you've played football professionally in that you were sexually abused as a child is probably the most courageous thing I've ever come across. A lot of them have really suffered the impact of that trauma that it's caused as a child, and that has caused relationship problems, drug and alcohol problems, suicidal ideation. It causes massive trauma. And people, one of the questions people always say is, well, why did it take so long to tell anyone? Well, they were ashamed. They were children. And they were bullied and they were manipulated and they were told not to tell anyone, and the family was threatened. And I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning, I worked with Paul Stewart, former international England player, Tottenham, Liverpool, Man City. He'll be amazed that I've remembered those clubs. He goes and educates the kids now. He goes to academies and he travels all around the country. And I'm sure he won't mind me saying he's getting older, and he's got a family up in the northwest, and he doesn't see them as much. But it's because he does not want another child to be harmed the way that he was. And I've never met such a brave and strong group of people, to be honest, because my experience at the Crown Prosecution Service was people exhibiting the same kind of behaviours, that kind of response to trauma behaviour throughout the life. But no one knew about it because it was a private case. It was a case where you'd go and give evidence, but it wasn't on the Victoria Derbyshire show. You weren't sitting there telling them. So I think that the impact of those men going on that show has had an everlasting change, Danny. It's had an everlasting change in professional sport. And obviously we've had other reviews. There's been, we had the Sheldon review for football, but we had the White review for gymnastics. So, about bad practices of coaches, a lot of weight issues, a lot of body shaming issues, over exercising on injuries, that kind of, I suppose it's a strap line about in sport, what's more important, the medal and the win over the wellness of the athlete.
Welfare,
and so we talk about, I've done work with the British Horse Racing Authority, and we talk about human welfare. They've got human welfare strategy, and it's like a snowball effect, I think. And what has happened is it's given these national governing bodies the opportunity to say, I'm sorry, safeguarding's at the top of your agenda at board, or at least it's a standing item and you need to get to it every meeting. All the football clubs, I don't know about the Premier League, I don't think it exists in the Premier League as mandatory, but in the EFL, every single owner and board member have to have this mandatory training. They worked with the NSPC, and we had to answer questions, basically. So, like, what does good safeguarding look like? And then there were about 5 or 6 different people that answered the question. So it just means that you're getting that message from top to bottom. And it doesn't, you don't have to pay. And I appreciate that at grassroots, you've not got the budget, you're relying on volunteers. But one of the things that I have kind of mentioned to myself in notes is, ask your parents, if you've got all these kids around, there'll be at least one parent or carer or grandparent who's a police officer, a lawyer, a teacher, a social worker. Ask them to do a bit of safeguarding. Obviously coaches have to have the FA, the FA certified.
It's like level 1, isn't it?
But you could apply those models. The best times that my kids' team are having is when all the parents and kids get together and they have a barbecue and they're, having a good time at the end of the season. Parents and carers in professional clubs quite often will go in. It might only be like once or twice a year, 3 times maybe, but they go in and they have a online safety education evening, a safeguarding, so they're introduced to the safeguarding policy. So why not that at grassroots? Utilize your parents. These parents are passionate people, and if you've got parents who have a background in child protection and safeguarding, if they're willing, just, it could be a 1-pager, it could be 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a really, as long as it's impactful. that's the thing for me, is that you could have like a top 10 tips. Yeah, we're just handing out these sheets. We just want to remind you that safeguarding matters, and mental health is really important. And if you've got any concerns about the behaviours of anybody around the pitch, come and speak to me, the coach, or
Yeah.
that's it.
This is it. Yeah. Well, this is like I saw, from my perspective, sort of grassroots coach. I always thought, if I've got like a welfare or safeguarding concern, I know exactly where to go in my club, because
Yeah.
safeguarding is there at the top of the agenda. And I looked and I thought, well, if I've got a mental health concern around, a player, a parent, a coach, anyone involved in my team, I don't know where to go. And this is why we implemented the mental health first aid training. And we're basically on a mission to try and get at least one mental health first aid trained individual in every club in England. So not just grassroots, but every club. And when we do the training, and like you were saying about how grassroots clubs can utilize those involved in the club stakeholders, so if they're a policeman, etc., the clubs we get on the training, because they're all interested in safeguarding and mental health and neurodiversity, they're all already doing this. And some of the stuff they're doing is bloody brilliant. And I sit on all the training of the neurodiversity, sit on all the training that we do of the mental health first aid, and every session I learn something from the delegates. They're sharing best practice. And point I'm making is, I think it's like anything, it comes from the top. So when you said the EFL clubs all have to have, everyone on the board has to have the safeguarding training, that is bloody brilliant, because it then filters down, does it? And you're looking at a whole club approach. And I think like one of the things that I see difficulty in is like old school opinions around safeguarding and mental health. And how do you approach that? And how do you like I said earlier on, I said some things are wrong, no matter what era, no matter where we live, what we do, some things are black and white wrong. As things have changed, some areas have become grey, some areas become that's wrong. And what I see a lot now is, I might be at a football match at any level, and someone next to me says something, and I'll say, hey up mate, you can't say that. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, and I'll explain the sort of reasons why, and then they'll say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and the next 20 minutes they're apologising to me about what they've said, and it could be something around sexuality, racism, mental health, disability, safeguarding, whatever. And I'm saying, it's fine, mate. I know you didn't mean it, and I'm sorry, and I didn't mean like that. And so how do we sort of take this change in society and what's right and what's wrong and what wrong? How do we deal with that? How can we help clubs with this?
I'd say that we basically clone you and that example and grow an army of like safeguarding. You don't have to be a safeguarding officer, but, it's about check and challenge. I mean, I'm
challenge.
I'm a northern woman who went down to London with this like really green dream of getting my wig and gown and going into chambers and going to court in London. And I was so naive, so naive. And the amount of anti-northern sexist rhetoric that went through the criminal
bar. Imagine.
When I can't even remember when I graduated. When did I get? 2002 I graduated. I was at Hull University. Went down to London and then finished my bar course in 2003. So then I spent the next 3 or 4 years in chambers in the most white, middle class, male dominated profession. Probably apart from surgery. I don't know. I'm thinking that's probably the other kind of football. So basically, I had to grow a really thick skin. And I think in my 20s, perhaps put up with behaviours that I, at 45, absolutely would not put up with those behaviours. So I think it's about educating everyone to say, so the kids get the education at school. The kids know that if they don't feel comfortable with something, they can say it. It doesn't mean they will say it, but they know that exists. And you might get a kid going to school and saying, oh, my coach shouted at me on Saturday morning. So it's about coaches being aware that kids are educated in school to tell somebody if they're uncomfortable. I think it is, again, these poor parents. I'm going back to the parents, but it's about challenging the parents. You know, me and my other witch of Eastwick, next, she'll know who she is if I send her this podcast. You know, we stand there and we'll say, that's not appropriate, that's not appropriate. And in the end, we wind ourselves up and say, hey, like, can you wind your neck in? You know, I'm not saying I have never, ever raised my voice at that football pitch, right? I am quite passionate, but I'd hope to think people would think I've done it in a positive way. Go on, go on. You're allowed to cheer your child. It's when you start criticising other children. That's you know, that's the bit that's not allowed. And I think if we just I think it's just jumping on what I would say is that snowball effect, that the kids are getting the message at school. If the coaches give the parents the message, it might be that you start doing inductions. You know, like if you get new kids, you just have a little one pager for the parents. This is what we expect of you. You know, the FA have got loads of guidance on their website about safe to play. You know, like safe sport, safe football. You know, and the FA are quite explicit that they don't want to tolerate negative behaviour in football. I don't think you'll ever eradicate it. You know, humans are humans, and you'll always have that. I can see that person, you know, like in my mind's eye. Oh well, it never did me any harm. That's the bit. It's oh well, it never. My mum and dad used to leather me, and it never did me any harm. I can't do a southern accent, but I'm sure that there's the equivalent as well. I'm not trying to be just because we're both from the north.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I just think that we're in 2025, and the government has only just changed the legislation about sexual harassment in the workplace. Like, we're not doing great.
No. Well, this is what I say to people, Jenny, about football. Like, we're behind where we should be in society around sexual harassment, mental health, you know, things which safeguarding, racism. We're behind where we should be, but then football is always about 5 years behind where society is. So in football, we're miles behind where we need to be. And a lot of the issues I see is not, you do get an ass to dickheads on both sides, on spectators and coaches, you get them. The majority that I see is purely ignorance. And I'm not saying that's okay, you know, but it's lack of education and ignorance around the topics that we're talking about, whether it be racism, sexuality, mental health, safeguarding, etc. It's ignorance. And like you said, kids now at young ages are it's not a massive part of the curriculum, but they are, you know, they are shown about mental health and safeguarding and racism and sexuality and stuff, and you know, they're given tools to understand it. But then when they're going home, a lot of the, you know, a lot of the home life, the people that are living with, parents, carers, etc., don't have a clue about it. So it's getting lost in that gap between school and home. And this again is another thing that we're trying to do, is give everyone tools around mental health so they can gen themselves up on it. And I think, like you said about the issue with football, you know, you look at it, there's always going to be problems, because you know, you go to any football match and you've always got dickheads abusing ref, abusing fellow fans, abusing each other. And generally, and I'm not trying to stereotype here, but if you look at them, they generally look like me, at my age, and you know, so when people are seeing it in professional game, you then see the exact same dickhead on a Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon in your standard grassroots game, doing what they do, because it's football. And it's, I just think, you know,
I don't know whether we'll ever eradicate that kind of typified behaviour, because you'll always have, I mean, there's been funded research into hooliganism in football, and I think it is an uphill battle. And from what I see, the people that work in professional football, they absolutely try the best. That, you know, the safeguarding officers try the best. You know, they bang the drum. Everybody is dedicated to safeguarding. It's on the websites. You know, everyone knows about it. But you will always get a group of people who, frankly, drink too much alcohol on a Saturday and then start, you know, the amount of racist. I know we're going a bit off piece, but you know, the amount of racist slurs for men who are just doing their job. That's all they're doing. They're just playing football and playing it really well. And what, because of the colour of their skin, someone thinks it's okay to shout off throw things at them. It's just totally unacceptable. So I think in answer to your question is it's about being a good bystander. So there are some organisations out there that do bystander training, and that's
Right.
a word. Yeah, it's certainly a word that I'm coming across a lot more.
I
And
like that.
it's about challenging it. It's like, I'm not going to say the word out loud because I don't like the word,
Yeah.
but the B word that some men refer to as women, like women, the B word,
Yeah.
right? I don't like that. If my son's come out with it, and I'm not saying my eldest, who is autistic ADHD, hasn't said it in the past, I will challenge every time.
Mm.
Challenge. Don't use it.
Mm.
Academy staff in professional football clubs should be, if the boys are using that word, in a conversation when they're just doing their education piece in club, they should be challenging it. It's about getting rid of that lower level approach. So research has shown that if you challenge behaviours at that lower level, then it's less likely that they're going to go on and commit offences, for example, against children. So that's probably in a sexual abuse kind of scenario, in that if they're making making inappropriate comments towards children, or being a bit adult, too much adult information, you'd be challenging that, saying it's not appropriate, it's not acceptable, and you do something about it. So it's about that. It's about again, it goes back to just being a good human, just making sure. But some people aren't confident enough.
No.
I don't know whether if I was in a football stadium on my own as a woman, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable challenging someone's behaviour directly. I think what I would do is go and tell a steward. I'd go and
That's the thing, Jenny. I wouldn't. Been a bloke who's 6 foot odd. I still, not that it matters I'm a bloke, but maybe I've got more physical presence about me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, because you don't. It's not, and like bluntly, and people might not like what I'm going to say here, it's not worth it, because you don't know if that person has got that about them to do something like that, then you don't know what else. So for me, if I were going to challenge anyone, I'd be challenging them via the proper channels within that club. Even sometimes on a sideline, I've seen things kick off when someone has challenged someone over his behaviour, and the dickhead's then gone thinking that, and it's not just men, it's will then start puffing their shoulders up and think they have to get all aggressive, and what we've done previously, if we've been playing a team where there's been known issues around the players or the spectators, we've just had our welfare officer there just to be there, and they've been brilliant. We'll just say, look, we've never had any trouble with this team, but we know there has been, and it's not always the players. When you're talking about kids football, it's the people on the sideline, and our welfare officer's just been there just to then be a witness for anything that may happen. And that's just one thing I would share. And there's one thing I wanted to ask you as well, which I know I mentioned to you before we kicked off, that when we're doing the mental health first aid training, we sort of know, like mental health conversation, like a safeguarding conversation, carries a lot of responsibility. We're not all confident about approaching it because of the responsibility it covers. Will we say something wrong? Will we signpost someone incorrectly? And one of the things we're talking about is spotting signs in people and then referring them to the correct channels. So what will come up is, well, if I'm coaching my team, and there might be my kids' team, let's say, and I'm we're having a conversation about how they are, and then they disclose something about the mental health which feels that it's something needs to go a bit further. What should I do? And it's a topic that people are always also a bit unsure of what to advise for getting it wrong. So if I'm having a conversation, one of my players, and it's not just about mental health, it could be about well-being, and they tell me something that needs to that can't just be ignored, shall we say. What's best practice where that's concerned?
Okay, right. Well, the first thing is that the child's welfare is your primary thing. That's your primary thought process. So, as we know, every parent's different, every child is different. So with one parent, if you talk to the parent, they might react in a really positive way. In another way, you might get the second parent, and the second parent's really negative. So if you just take the parents out of the equation at the moment, you've got a duty to do something about that child. So every club should have a safeguarding officer.
Yeah.
And every club should have a safeguarding policy. So in that policy, your safeguarding officer or the board, or whoever's in that senior
the committee,
committee, you should have the processes and procedures in that policy, and that policy should be available to everybody in simple language, but it's a live document, because there's no point in having a policy, put it in a drawer, right? So I'm a big believer in, if you're sticking to this policy, it should have a flow chart, so it should tell you on the flow chart what to do. So the main thing is write your concerns down at the time, even like a little pocket notebook, write your concerns down.
On your phone, you could put notes on your phone, couldn't you, or whatever.
Those notes are confidential between you and that safeguarding officer, but you go as soon as you can. I'd say within 24 hours. It depends on the nature of what they're telling you. I would be going speaking to the safeguarding officer. It's then for the safeguarding officer to do something about it. But your role, because you've escalated it to the safeguarding officer. Right. So what do we do with the parents? I'd say that depending on what that disclosure is. So if it's a bit of like a triage system. If a child discloses that they're going to get battered when they get home by dad, stepdad, or mum, stepmum, whoever, right? That is an emergency situation, and you might feel that this is going to happen in such rare occurrences, Danny. But it's good to know what to do if that happens.
Definitely. You
should be ringing the police. That's what I would be advising. However, if it's a child and they're saying, I think I feel depressed, and I don't really want to tell my mum and dad. Well, actually, sometimes we have to safeguard children from themselves. So I would be taking parent care to the side, having a quiet word, and informing the parent and the child that you don't have a choice, but you've got to escalate that. You've got to just note. The safeguarding lead might not do anything about it. The welfare officer might not do anything about it, because it's dealt with by parents. They take them to the doctor and they've dealt with it. But it's about what you can do at the time with the information that you're given at the time. And obviously there's a whole range of if a child's telling you that they tried to commit suicide last night, that is an emergency situation. Again, it's a critical issue that needs to be dealt with there and then. And they probably need to be taken to A&E if that's the case. I know that I always go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So like in that instance, and obviously it's the very worst, case. Would I? Again, this is the difficulty that that we have when we're talking about this. It's like, well, would I then immediately ring 999? Would I immediately tell the parents? Would I tell my safeguarding officer? I know and this is the thing for me, and I'm not saying I'm right, but in my head, I think the difficulty with it is there's no fixed and firm answer on everything. Everything's like a moving,
It does help having some processes within that safeguarding policy.
The club needs to have processes, doesn't it? It should have.
Yeah, because then everybody knows where they are if that happens. I think, one of the things I'd put in my notes before, which I'm going a bit too, not off topic, but you'd asked me to think about future vision, and you've already mentioned this, is that I'd said I'd like to at least see a rolling out of the mental health first aid scheme in all grassroots football. We've got it in the EFL club, so there's at least a few members of staff who are mental health first aid trained, because actually if you've done your mental health first aid training, you'll know that there's that process called algae. Are they having thoughts? Have they acted on the thoughts? Do they have a plan? So if you've got somebody who, really, it should be every coach, shouldn't it? Because the coaches know the better. So you would be going through that process, and if they're going to say to you, I'm going to go home and harm myself, then that is an emergency situation. And people are worried about GDPR and data protection and can I tell anybody? Well, you're not going to go and tell the parent of the other team who's just been screaming and shouting at this lad all match, right? You're not going to do that. because that's a breach of confidentiality.
Yeah.
You're entitled to say to the child, listen, I can't keep this information to myself. I've got to safeguard you. I can see that your mum's over there. Do you want me to talk to your mum on my own, or do you want to come and you've got to share that information. And I think that's the key to the whole safeguarding problem, or the way that people see it, is they're worried about what's going to happen. What's going to happen if I tell someone? Am I going to get in trouble? Is someone going to fine me for a GDPR breach? No, they're not. It's not. It's about safeguarding. The welfare of a child comes first.
Yeah.
And as long as you can justify that decision, you've written it down and you've signed it and dated it, then you've got the reason that you're doing it is to try and safeguard the mental health of that child.
So
I think safeguarding mental health can't exist without the other.
So like in essence, then really, the responsibility, if that's the correct term, initially always lies with the club having mental health protocols and documents in place that coaches should make themselves aware of and work to, for want of a better term.
Yeah, and I would have thought that the FA, it's been a long time since I've completed the FA induction to safeguarding, but I'm assuming that in that it talks about policies. You should have a policy. That's your starting point. You should have a code of conduct, making sure that you're referring parents to the FA website, and it's about making sure that we are creating a really safe and happy environment for these children, because we know as adults, if you're not in the right mood and you're having a bad day, you're not going to perform at work. If you're feeling good, you've had your coffee, you've had a good night's sleep, you're rocking it, and you turn up to work and you do a really good day, because we're human beings. So children are not little adults, they are children. Their brains are developing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it till 25 or 24 your brain is developing? So if we're talking grassroots football, you're looking ages 4 to 17, and everything in between. If you're happy, it goes back to what I said about how Keith Hill had said that to me about kids just need to be happy because they'll perform better. And that, we say that at first team professional football level, if you're feeling happier, if your mental health is good, then you're going to perform better on the pitch. It's that simple. So whether
in life, and in every area of your life, it's like, for me, kids, people don't see that. Most adults I see haven't got it together, but we expect kids to have it together. And like you said, that
if they kick off or they're a bit a bit cocky on the pitch, why are parents shouting at them? You should be saying why is that behaviour happening?
This is what we do. Sorry, Jenny, but this is what we're doing with the neurodiversity training as well, to educate, not just coaches, but whole clubs around why a kid might be kicking off, for want of a better term. And this is the thing that we see is that when I'm reffing, the first thing I'll go to coach, I'll say, right, I'm Danny, I'm ref. Anything I need to know about your players? So I'll start a bit subtly, and they'll go, what do you mean? Or some of them will go, oh yeah, he's got autism, she's not had her meds, he's ADHD, and some of them will say, what do you mean? I say, any developmental differences that I need to know about, so should there be anything happen, we can deal with it together. And they'll explain that, but when they're warming up, I can see the kids, how they are. And a story I said last week, and it just going back to the sidelines, is one of the lads on the other team, they were losing and they were getting really wound up, and he was starting to get to the point where there were going to be like an explosion, or and I was watching him just to so I could help him through it, and he just 5 minutes later just took himself off to the sideline and sat down. And their coach is going, oh, ref, I'm so sorry. I said, mate, it's not bother. I said, don't worry about it. We spoke about it, quietly. I said, don't worry about it. I said to the lad, I said, hey up, mate. I said, you take your time and just let me know when you want to come back on, and you're back on. Just take it easy, no rush. And I was saying it to him, but I was also saying it to the sideline to let him know that if I don't care that he's on there, you don't care. So don't challenge me. He sat down for 5 minutes. Obviously brought himself back down and played brilliantly.
Right.
And I was so proud of him that he'd actually understood his triggers. And we're only talking about 12, 13-year-old kid here.
Yeah.
That he took himself off and come back on. And like I said, for me, it's that word ignorance around everything we've discussed today. It's ignorance, and it's not an excuse, but you can't know everything about everything, can you, Jenny?
No, absolutely. I think it's excellent example, that, Danny. I think that's exactly what every coach on every football pitch should be doing around the country on a Saturday and Sunday morning. I think we, more and more we're seeing, social, emotional, behavioural difficulties. We're seeing kids who are victims themselves. You don't know what's on behind closed doors, and we've got lots of children being diagnosed as being neurodivergent. And what would we do is, if we were a teacher, what would we do? Well, we'd differentiate the way that we deal with those children. And they deserve. I'm a parent of a new. We've talked to it. I'm a parent of a new first child. Remember, they deserve more. It sounds awful to say, and I don't mean it like special treatment. They just need more understanding. Because some kids who have not been through trauma, kids who are neurotypical, they don't have the same struggles. They still have struggles. No. I'm not saying that the kids don't have struggles, but it is an extra burden for a child. And some children who are neurodiverse are not suited to team playing. Yeah, it's just not suited. Not suited to it.
Autism doesn't always lend it. Like, I got an email yesterday, Jenny. Really, I'm just going to read this to you now. And he said, "Hi Danny, thanks for organised seminar. I've taken a lot from it, and we're already seeing impact of it. Anyways, but we had a game yesterday, and one of our boys reflexively handled the ball, giving away a penalty. He then got a bit of an earful from one of his teammates, resulting in him storming to the sideline with his back turned. Another coach wanted to immediately sub him, but after learning of the success of others, I asked for him to be given a minute while play was stopped to talk things out a bit and clear his head. He then resumed play and did a great job for the rest of the match." Right. And it just shows that understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just wanted to highlight this as an example of the impact of your work, not mine, but the training. And I just thought it made me think, bloody hell, brilliant. It's all it takes. Instead of everyone just jumping and being so quick to judge and get him off and he's done this, to just chill out, the kids.
I feel like our conversation's going in a circle, because I'd say that's because parents don't understand.
They don't. No, they don't. But you can't understand everything, can you, Jenny? You can't. You can't understand everything. And I'm not saying it's okay. And this is where it comes from, work you're doing to educate people about the varying intricacies of human beings.
It is. It's just about looking after each other. I think like one of my brother-in-law will be so proud of me that I've remembered this football example for your listeners. I don't know which match it was, but Gaza was on there. Gary Lineker was on there, and Gaza got injured. It must have been, I feel it was either England.
World Cup 1990, semi-final against West Germany, World Cup semi-final.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And he got injured and he was crying, stretched off on the pitch. And Gary Lineker looked at the manager and went, Jim,
no, he did. What he did is he fouled someone, got a yellow card, and he'd have missed the final.
Yeah.
And Gary Lineker saw him going. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is what we need to do. Be more like Gary Lineker. Just making sure we're keeping eyes on each other. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's just making sure that I think safeguarding is seen as like this busybody kind of profession, and it's not. It's about being a nice person and making sure that we're all okay, and just really asking as well, like if you don't know the answer to a question, you've got to ask. Just ask if someone's all right. That's all you need to do. That's it might be the opportunity where a child says, well, no, actually, my grandma died yesterday. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know. They've been kicking off, and they've been, yellow carded or whatever. It's actually about communication behaviour, isn't it? So children's behaviour is about communication. If they're not behaving in the way you as an adult think they should be behaving, there is a reason why. Usually.
So that's it, Jen. You've hit nail on the head though, Jenny. It's because we think as adults and we forget what it's like to be kids. So we're thinking as adults think, and you think, well, that's not acceptable. We shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, well, a kid doesn't know that because he's 30 years younger than you.
Yeah, and I think also kids nowadays, they're under so I think about like the naivety and innocence
Yeah,
of me at 10 and 11 years old. So just on the cusp of going to secondary school,
yeah,
I was so innocent. I used to play out on my bike all day
yeah.
with my friends. There was no helicopter parenting by my parents. They were loving, kind parents, but they, I got told off if I was gobby. I was mainly all right, a bit chatty.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Can't imagine that.
I know, yeah, came home for my tea,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that was it. I remember one memory of Jerry Adams being on the TV and thinking, why are his lips moving in a different way? So I must have been watching BBC
I
News when
remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
his voice come on TV, and now I think my uh nearly 10-year-old, so he's 9 and a bit, said to me the other day, "Oh, did you know that they have metal detectors in high schools in America because people go in and shoot everybody?" And I was just like, I was speechless. Just thought
Mm,
it really upset me because I thought, why do you know that? Well,
yeah,
probably bloody YouTube, but
yeah, yeah. It's in it. Ah,
children
phone.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, phone. Children know too much,
yeah.
so they've
I
got that
agree.
pressure of knowing too much, knowing about adult issues, having that developing brain. So what we should be doing at the football pitch on the sidelines is encouraging them and remembering that they're
Yeah, yeah.
children. They're not.
I think it also goes back though to what you said then about what we were like when we were kids. And you said right at the start, oh, it never did me any harm, what people will say. So I think as parents, we're in that area where we're stuck between, well, I went out all the time with my friends on my bike. For me, it was just playing football in field behind where we lived, or every day, all day during school holidays, where now I speak, and I think kids nowadays, they're how they socialize is majority is
Online.
through the gaming online, and so like all the time I'm saying, Jude, get out,
Yeah,
not kick him out, but you need to, well, and so put a message on, and he says no one wants to go out, Dad. They all just want to. So it's nice that on a night I hear him, his PlayStation's in downstairs other room. I can hear him talking to his mates and having a laugh. And obviously in winter you won't have him out anyway because it's dark. But on holidays, like bugger off out. But they
yeah,
don't. So I think as parents, we stuck out between what it was like when we were kids, what kids have to deal with now, and the pressures they're under through phones, social media, and stuff. And I think that sometimes lends itself to like the safeguarding mental health area being a
absolutely.
bit muddled. Do you know what I mean? A bit grey and a bit. I don't know what to do.
I think I would advocate, if any of your listeners have the opportunity to move to the countryside, whatever part of the country they live in, I would say, you know, some people might think village life's a bit parochial. You know what? My kids go out and they play out all day, and
Yeah,
biking. They still have the PlayStations and stuff,
yeah,
but they're learning, they're exploring, they're doing exactly what I did in the 80s, and I think the better kids for it. Fresh
yeah. I
air,
agree. Yeah,
which is
I
football, isn't
agree.
it? And I think we probably, as a conclusion as well to like our conversation, Danny, about what why are we sending our kids to play football at
Mm,
grassroots? Because we love the game. It's the UK's game, but we're teaching them teamwork. We're
mm,
teaching them how to limit their reactions when something's not going their way. Communication, respect for each other, teamwork, looking out for each other. Those are all amazing skills that
mm.
will actually help them as they do navigate this really, you know, weird world that we live in. It's going to help them, and we've got to remember that that's why we send our kids
Yeah,
to
yeah,
extracurriculars, football being one, is we want them to have those skills. So when we do, God, the thought of it, sending them off into the real
mm,
world, when they do go out, their mental health is stronger,
yeah,
and they're not thinking that something's a disaster. Like, you hear so many stories now, don't you, about kind of this, I don't, is it Generation Z, going into the workplace and
mm,
and filing complaints about having to be made a tray of tea and coffee.
yeah,
Or you get that, don't you? It's about, I don't really like the word resilience, but it's about
yeah,
proportionality, isn't it? And how
yeah,
you react to a situation. And football's a great way to teach them that, and long may it last forever. At grassroots level, it's a wonderful thing. And I think, an apology probably to parents and carers, because I feel like they've got it in the neck, but they, you know who you are.
Yeah.
And just do better, and just remember that if you're shouting at someone on a Saturday morning who's on the other team, they're only 9.
Jenny, to conclude, you've nailed it. So thank you. You've given me a great title for it as well. Be more like Gary Lineker at the 1990 World Cup. That's the title for the podcast, and you've just nailed the ending there perfectly. So
that's great.
Thanks so much. You encapsulated everything we spoke about in a couple of sentences there. So thanks so much for this, Jenny. It's been brilliant. I don't know where time's gone. I'm looking at time thinking, bloody hell, and I said 45 minutes. I've kept you all morning. So no, brilliant. It was superb, Jenny. Honestly, superb. Absolutely brilliant. And it was great because, people that are going to listen are going to be like lay people around what we're talking about, but you made it all understandable and like, oh yeah, I get that. That's what I want people to listen to stuff like this and go, yeah, I get that. Because people in your situation a lot of the time, not you, because I can tell by how you talk, but they're talking big words, long syllables, and it just turns people away from it because they don't understand it. And when you said that time about, you're at school and teacher asks, did you understand that? You never put your hand up because you didn't want to look stupid. And it's same about safeguarding and mental health. People talking big words, and people don't have the confidence in themselves or what they talk about to go, oh, sorry, I didn't understand that. So they walk away from it. And just keep it simple, like you said, and so brilliant, Jenny. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it.